there, Words on Flicks fans and friends. It's your girl, Janine Coveney, here with sort of a bridge episode of the Words on Flicks show for August 2022. 2022? Yeah, 2022. I don't know, it sounded weird when I said that. Anyway, there is no audio podcast this month because eWater Radio, headed by Ed Waterford, is taking a little break till October. So that means all of the shows are being reevaluated, retuned, stocked up. The shelves are being stocked, so to speak. And I'll be back with a regular audio show in October. But in the meantime, I didn't want you to think that I'd forgotten you. So here I am with sort of a video. However, I don't really have a topic. um, it's been a little bit up and down in terms of seeing new movies in theaters. My intent with the Words on Flicks blog from the beginning was to talk about films that uh, I appreciated from the classic era. Films from the past, great films from the past. I grew up in New York City. My mother was a big film fan and still is a big film fan. And she's the person that really got me watching, old black and white movies, comedies, farces from the 1950s. I'm looking at the clothing that women wore in the 1950s and the big MGM musicals and those type of things. Started me looking at actresses like Eartha Kitt and Ingrid Bergman and Elizabeth Taylor, who I became fascinated with. I wasn't a big Marilyn Monroe fan, but it fascinates me that the world was fascinated by her. I love Jack Lemmon. I love Cary Grant. I think it has to do with the English accent. I've always had a thing for an English accent. And just, you know, films that told stories from earlier eras because I think it's been fascinating to me to learn history through the march of time, like American history, but more so American culture, mores, morals, ethics, what people considered to be appropriate behavior um, in days past and versus what they are today. The idea of leaving a calling card, of wearing gloves, of women wearing slips and petticoats and corsets and things that women weren't allowed to do that men were allowed to do. And then through the 1930s and the 1950s, even through the 60s and 70s, all of the social expectations around sexual behavior and what was deemed appropriate and what was not, and how pregnancies were hidden and unless you were married, how shameful it was to bear a child out of wedlock. Also, issues of older men being involved with young girls. It didn't occur to me until I was an adult watching a film like Sabrina that Audrey Hepburn was just, she was a little gamine girl, 18, 20, running around with this ancient Bogart in Sabrina. And, he was older, a lot older. And even in the film Roman Holiday, where she's with Gregory Peck, he is so much older than she is. And that was considered normal, de rigueur, if you will, to be European and continental about it. Um, Nobody thought anything about it of a young girl, even a teenage girl, being involved with an older man. It was expected, it was condoned. Today, it is child abuse. Um, you wouldn't, it's frowned upon to have a man older than 20 be involved with a teenager, statutory rape. It's really interesting how times change. Um, Even how people were expected to speak to one another, the depictions of race and color in different films is fascinating to me. And so that's why I got interested in talking about some of these issues and how I appreciated the storytelling in older films. Um, I watched Ingrid Bergman the other day in the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, um, which starred Spencer Tracy as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's a black and white film. I forget what year it came out. I want to say 1949. And Bergman is in it, and she's beautiful and she's heartbreaking. And Spencer Tracy does a great job because he's absolutely terrifying in this film when he turns into Mr. Hyde. Now, never read the novel, so the film only hints at some of the horrible things that he does to um, the waitress that he picks up, which is Ingrid Bergman's character. But among things that he does is beat her, physically beat and abuse her, and it looks like there's a lot of sexual abuse as well. And it's just horrifying. But what I never really thought about the film's message before, I think the first time I even saw Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was way back in when I was a kid, and I grew up in the Bronx, and so our summer camp was day camp. So there was a local Catholic elementary school, St. Raymond's, and they ran a day camp where you could enroll your kids, and we had activities and we played sports, and we went on um, every like once a week we went out to the country to run around in the woods and swim and camp and do those things. But anyway, if it rained while we were in the city, instead of playing outside on the yard and playing softball or volleyball or whatever, they would show us a movie in the auditorium. And I think this was one of those movies, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And all I remember from it is how terrifying Mr. Hyde was, and the way that the camera showed his transformation from Spencer Tracy as Dr. Jekyll, who was a respected doctor in the 1880s in England, and then they, had this time lapse sort of black and white photography that showed how his hair got wilder and darker, and his eyebrows became bushier, and his face became sort of more pugnacious, and he just turned into Mr. Hyde. But the other part about it was that what was my point in telling you about this? The other part about it was that as Dr. Jekyll, he had a theory that there is evil in all men, and it's only society's rules that keep the evil in check. And through Mr. Hyde, he gave in to all of his baser instincts, his mean streak, his vindictiveness, um, his desire for mayhem and to hurt people. And that became much more clear to me. And I think it's true about human nature that every one of us has some part of us inside that kind of wonders what would happen if we did the evil thing. But anyway, I digress. More in a minute. Okay, I'm back after a brief break. So what else can I tell you about? I got the TCM app on my Fire Stick, which has been a boon. I mean, I know there's a lot of channels that talk about movies and show older movies, and I haven't really tried them all out. I have Amazon Prime, I have HBO Max. Someone was telling me about the Criterion Collection, which I haven't gotten into yet, and I do have TCM on my cable package, but sometimes I like to be able to go back and watch films that TCM showed that I missed. And the TCM app is really great because some of the films that they show, they they not only show the movie, but they'll give you the host their introduction to the movie as well. So I think it was Saturday, this past Saturday, where TCM showed a series of movies starring the Japanese actor Toshiro Mifune. And I know his name. I hadn't seen some of the, or any of the, let me just be frank, I hadn't seen any of those classic um, movies from Toshiro Mifune's early years and with his collaboration with the director Kurosawa. So I went back and I watched on the app this film that has been touted as one of Kurosawa's best and most imitated groundbreaking storytelling films, Rashomon, which I had never seen. And it's a black and white film. It is from 1950, I want to say. And it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's a great story that shows you how mankind, once again, there seems to be a theme. There can be evil and good in each of us, and we just choose which one to act upon depending on our nature, depending on the social climate, what are our motivations, what is the prospect for repercussions for our actions. So you see the story of a rape and murder from the point of view of four different people, including the murdered man who speaks through a shaman, I guess, or a witch, or however, fortune teller. I forget what they call it. And I the reason that I was most interested in this film, or became most engaged with the film, I should say, is the fact of Toshiro Mifune's acting. He plays like this terrible um, Japanese bandit during feudal medieval times in Japan who commits this crime. But his performance is, first of all, he's really young. He's really fine. Leave it to me to notice that. But his performance is just so over the top and engaging, and he's funny, and he's terrible, and he is thoughtful, and there's a couple of scenes of swordplay in here, and there's a scene when he's been dragged into the Japanese court and he's bound and sitting cross-legged, and the court is asking him these questions. Why did he commit this crime? So he's telling his version of what happened, and he is literally laughing in the faces of the people who are trying to bring him to justice by telling this story. And his performance is just so out there and in your face, and he's a terrible person. He's a bandit, he's a rapist, he's a murderer, but he's charismatic. What can I say? I also enjoyed the performance of the woman who played the she's not a geisha, but she's the wife who is assaulted by him. She is just you feel her her in some stories she's pious and ashamed, and in other stories she's fierce and combative, and in another story she's just this shrewish, um may the better man win. I want to go with the survivor, the survivor of the fittest, I guess she's like. But her performance is really good as well. So I really enjoyed that film. And so, sometimes it hurts to confess that as a film fan and as the host of the Words on Flicks podcast, I haven't seen all movies. I haven't, I'm not a cinema scholar. Uh, I haven't studied it. I'm just a fan who really loves movies and loves to talk about them. So, uh, there are several other Kurosawa Toshiro Mifune films on the TCM app, and I am going to watch them and educate myself. So that's what I'm planning to do. So, anyway, just thought I'd check in with you. The Words on Flick show will be back in October, but I'll see you before then. I got a couple of things up my sleeve. So, and look, you can go on Blog Talk Radio, look for E-Water Radio, and you will find all the past episodes of the Words on Flick show. You have to look for them because they're sort of archived with all the other shows in the E-Water Radio family, and that's fine. You can listen to some of those other shows as well. But I want you to go back and listen to the Words on Flick show, particularly the shows from this year. I really loved the June show about fathers. That was really wonderful. And my shows about New York films, Los Angeles films, and Chicago was really fun too. So I hope you'll check that out, and I'll see you next time. Bye.